Hello, Withrows.
Mr.
Hi,
Bryant.
Jason.
Hello, Jason.
Great to see you guys again.
You
too.
too.
Got you compact there, looking sharp. How busy of a day has it been for you as we prep for the release of The Last Champion on December 8th?
It's been a busy day today, but it's been fun.
It's been a busy few months leading up to this. Yeah.
Why sugarcoat it, Glenn? It's been a busy couple years for this project. Let's just go back to the beginning. Where did this idea for The Last Champion start? Whose mind did it come out of? Where was the inspiration driven from to create this film?
Want to take it?
I'll take it.
You take it.
Well, I love wrestling, right? And we love riding together, and we said, let's come up with a sports story around wrestling. And we came up with The Last Champion. We came up with the struggle of this guy. Well, I'll let you address that. But we used it as a metaphor for the film because it's grappling, struggling, and that's what everybody's doing in the film. I mean, they're all struggling with something in that town. Cole struggling, his character coming back into that town. Elizabeth struggling, her, past emotions with him. That's where it came from.
Now, with your background, and you wrestled growing up, and how important was it for you as an actor, a producer, a filmmaker? You've got all these credits to your name. How important was it for you to get an actual chance to make a wrestling story?
It's a sport I love. It's the sport that I really excelled in high school, and I think it's a beautiful sport, and I wanted it to be shown in a really beautiful sort of almost like a bit of a ballet, if you want, with how we shot that final scene. And I wanted attention brought to it. It's a great sport, and I wanted people to get it and understand it, that it just doesn't have to be two guys up there boxing. There's something very artistic about wrestling. So.
Now, all three of you had a hand in writing and directing this, but I want to shift this over to you, Ivy. You've had a chance to work with your folks on a couple of projects in the past, and this one you had a heavy emphasis on. What was it like putting pen to paper and coming up with a script that's true to the mission and vision of the overall story, and two, a wrestling piece that's going to make your wrestling crazy dad happy?
It was a lot. It was so much fun. And I mean, it was a different process kind of than our first project. We took kind of a while to write it. I was in college at the time, so I would be coming up on weekends, and we'd sort of wait and continue working on it then when I was available. So it spanned kind of a long period of time, but he had always wanted to do that, and we were really into the idea of making an inspirational film. And I love sports movies, Rudy, Hoosiers, the Titans, all of those, and so we got behind that very quickly. And obviously we did not contribute a lot to the wrestling aspects of this film because we know nothing, and it is what it is. So
but they contributed, Jason, to the pain.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we worked like on tension and building drama within the wrestling sequences. Like we worked through that kind of together, sort of plotted that. But that was primarily you working on that. But yeah, it's been so much fun.
Now, to contrast, because I was doing some research here, and one of the early projects that you guys worked on together was a horror movie.
Yeah.
So explain the production and writing of something like that, which is not necessarily a feel good, because there's nothing that feels good about getting stabbed. But what is it about a feel good movie versus a horror movie in terms of setting it up from both a writing and directing standpoint?
No, it doesn't.
Okay. We with the mooring, we had wanted to do a project that would sort of be a niche, kind of like it would appeal to a niche audience, and it was sort of an easy project for us to do at that time. And this was definitely The Last Champion. We were sort of stepping out of our comfort zone a little bit, and because we knew that the production would be kind of
more ambitious,
more ambitious. We filmed in the same general area. They look completely different, but yeah, we're in love with the Pacific Northwest, and we have a lot of friends up there. So it was just, it really worked out in our favor.
And Hallie, you've played significant roles in both of these, you know, these films, one again on the horror side, one on the feel good side, the sports side. What's it like for you to be in a role like this with your family?
It feels kind of normal. I don't know. It sounds sort of strange to say that because it's such an abnormal situation making a movie with your family, uh, but we kind of have established sort of a pattern and a dynamic that it's like that's just kind of how we do it. The thing about the mooring was we wearing that was the first time I'd done where you have to wear multiple hats. And because that role was not as big of a departure from what I'm used to playing or who I am, going up to the last minute, worrying about, logistics or somebody's, some actor's needs or something happening that you got to make a phone call and track down something because it was super, super raw and independent. And then jumping in front of the camera and doing the scene wasn't quite as challenging as I knew that The Last Champion would be for me to do the part of Melinda and have those other things weighing on my mind. So I think my biggest challenge was not so much the character as much as just carving out time for myself to make sure I was taking care of myself as an actress, even though I had these other concerns and, wanting to make sure that people's like their rooms or whatever was on my mind, that you would never think about if you were just playing a part in a show. You would only be concerned with your own needs. So that was the challenge. And them having to get used to me, and them having to get used to me at home looking like that for several weeks.
Admittedly, I haven't seen it. I'm gonna have to go back and check it out. Although, I grew up with the Friday the 13th horror flicks. I'm not really into the genre as much more, but I'll do my diligence and go back and contrast and compare John Wright versus never mind. We're talking about The Last Champion, and we were looking at all the production and the time it took. And Glenn, this thing started, you talk about the Pacific Northwest. We shoot it in Eastern Washington and in Idaho. Weather provided some interesting situational filming. What was it like on location? And you're sitting there, you've got to be thinking, what is going to happen next? I mean, it was 2020 before it was even 2020 when you were doing this stuff.
That's true. Well, that region, we had been hit with a 17-year record snowfall. So the first day of shooting, we had to go out into a field to shoot, and I mean, it was up to my waist shooting, and it was a tough shoot. It was a tough shoot for a lot of reasons. We didn't have cell service in that little town of 600 people. There were complete whiteouts of time driving, trying to get back and forth to Pullman, scary. Which I think was about a 30-minute drive. It was tough. The crew really hung in there and endured a lot of, it was cold, a lot of weather. They were tough.
We had to improvise sometimes. Like it would be so cold, we would show up to set and the cameras would have icicles on them. The lenses, yeah. Yeah, so we'd have to take hair dryers and try to thaw them. It was
so they can move, so the lenses can move.
And this isn't just throwing your phone out there, a DSLR camera. I mean, this is high quality equipment here. That's okay, we're gonna have a $40,000 lens. Freeze. It's not exactly helpful when trying to film a movie outside.
Right. Yeah, it was tough, but it was also beautiful. It was, that was a gift. A friend of mine, he found all these locations for us, and
he was from there.
And he passed away 4 weeks before the film started shooting, and that was tough. But his spirit was there, and his spirit brought all that beautiful snow and made it look just like a beautiful winter sport and surrounding. And then you got Christmas, so it's got some nice elements.
Hallie, I'm just curious because I was only on the set, and I've mentioned this in the interviews with Cole, and it was the reshot down in Texas. I wasn't there for any of the other stuff, but when we look at what it takes to go from, to film a movie versus filming a television series, which most people that are slightly younger than me that grew up know your role from the Lizzie McGuire show, but what's the differences in shooting on set or on location as an actress for a television show compared to a movie?
Every show I've ever done, a television series, has always been on a soundstage with a controlled environment. And it goes so much more smoothly because you don't have to worry about unknowns. You can control everything and keep everybody kind of close, and they're on a lot, so they can't wander far. And it's a whole nother animal. It's like shooting on location. The location is a force in itself that you have to contend with, especially doing something in extreme weather. And it was extreme weather. There's a scene, I shot everything of my character inside except for one scene. And in that scene, everybody in the crew and the other two actors, Peter Onorati and Cole Hauser, had, Sorels on, or, winter clothes. And I was wearing a pair of vintage 70s heeled boots in the snow, and for hours and hours and hours. And I didn't really think, because I was concentrating on what I was doing. I didn't realize how cold I was, and they couldn't insulate my costume because it would have not fit, because it was like this tight little outfit. And by the time we finished, there were these bales of hay, and I threw myself over this bale of hay and just started banging my feet against the hay to just get the feeling back. I'm surprised I didn't lose toes on that. I mean, it was so
cold.
cold.
Sorry,
even,
honey.
even,
Sorry.
yeah, even in the snow boots, it was cold. I mean, you'd be
Yeah.
like standing there, you'd have heat packets like in the boots, and your feet were
Yeah.
Yeah, at that point, Ivy, you have second thoughts about getting into this business. You're like, wait a minute, I was kind of born into it. Do I
crazy.
really want to keep going down this path?
No, it's so much fun. I mean, it's hard, but it's I have loved almost every second of doing this project. So.
But what about this part of a career? I mean, it's not the first foray in this for you. I mean, you obviously got your parents to follow on, and how quickly did you decide growing up that I want to do what they do, or I want to do what they do with them?
I think about this, and I don't even know when that moment happened. My grandparents were also in the business as well, and my grandfather was a producer, and he was a lawyer. And so when I originally went to school to study film, and about halfway through, I ended up switching gears a little bit to study another subject, because I was just, the kind of education that I was getting on set was so, I was learning everything from like conception of the project all the way to distribution. And I know this business is super tough, and especially for women in this business. And there are more and more women who are absolutely breaking through and doing amazing things. But I knew that I wanted to go the extra step. And so I went to law school because I wanted to understand the business of film as well. And so that's key for me. But I love the artistic part just as much, if not more probably. But it's just been, I love every element of this. So I can't see myself in any other career. This is it.
Now, Glenn, when the script starts getting
The family. Sorry.
Go ahead. I didn't hear you catch.
I said it helps having an attorney in the family.
Have to take that one under
Strategize that right.
That started at about the 7th grade. Thinking about
saves
that.
on those billable hours for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
When this script starts getting floated around, well, one, how do you float a script around? That for people who don't know filmmaking, I being one of those people, when you've got a script, you've got a screenplay done. Okay, what's the next step? Because Cole Hauser had explained that his agent had given it to him and he wanted to get in touch with you. But fill in the blank there from the time it's done, you guys have it in hand to shopping it out and see who bites on it.
Well, we didn't really, and we don't really shop it out. I know that's the general path for everyone. They'll have an agent and they go and get the stars and get, the talent attached to it. But it's all about the money. We raise our own money for these films. We have we form companies with our investors, and that's how we do it. So we raise private equity, and that way we don't really have to put in, the input from the studios or we can be pretty free to do what we want to do, and hopefully our instincts pay off, and they have paid off, and people like what we're producing and putting out. We've got a couple more films. Next, I'm trying to, Cole and I are talking to shoot in New Orleans, and then another one that is a period piece that shoots in England and Canada, but we'll have to play that. We don't know how that's going to turn out.
Well, especially right now.
But we raise our own money. We raise our own money. We raise the dough. We raise the marketing money, and then everybody gets a piece of the pie.
It keeps it truly independent.
Yeah.
Now, with the movie process, then the other part is, okay, who's going to see it? Because there's been ideas for movies. There's been movies made. Then when they get made, that doesn't mean they get released. So
yeah.
The stress of finding distribution, COVID now has created a digital delivery on December 8th. I've already pre-ordered. Yes, I've pre-ordered it. I've got friends that have already pre-ordered it. Obviously, not just because I'm in it, because I've seen every wrestling movie and I own most of every wrestling movie that we can find. But the struggles, or I guess the stress behind the way to distribute this thing, explain that a little bit.
Well, that we had, we were in talks with some distributors and that were connected to studios, and it just at a certain point when COVID hit, it didn't make sense for us to go that direction, and it helped that all the theaters were closed down, so we decided to go this digital path, and I think it's great. I think it's great for independent filmmakers. I think there's a lot of avenues for their films to get out there. I will say, I think you have to write, I think you have to be involved with projects that will play to some niche markets. We had wrestling, we had, the inspirational faith adjacent attached, to this, and the general public that seemed to like, the comeback, the hero who comes back, and which Cole, I mean, he was a powerhouse in this film. He really was, and everybody came up to that standard with him. He was a great leader in that respect. He was a great guy to work with, and he brought people up, I think, to a level that we didn't know. And everybody stepped up in a really nice way. Does that answer it?
Yeah, you look at the timeline and say this gets released when we get it finished, a year and a half, however long ago it's been. Things are different now. Cole is huge with Yellowstone, and then you go look at the cast, and initially a couple years ago, okay, there's some stars that are ready to break out. They've had some roles, but then Casey Moss is on Days of Our Lives, arguably one of the most popular soap operas in the history of eternity.
And he's wonderful.
Yeah.
Taylor Dearden's Bryan Cranston's daughter, which I didn't even know until the premiere. I'm sitting behind Bryan Cranston, and I'm like, my wife said, I think that's Bryan Cranston. I'm like, no. And then I pull up, oh, it was. So you've got that. You've got Peter Onorati again. This Is Us is huge. So you look at all these factors coming in now that it's not just an independent film that's got wrestling at the center of this positive story. You've got some home run hitters in this lineup now that, a couple of years ago, if you release, then this movie may get a different reaction entirely.
Absolutely. I mean, this film's been, this has had it's been sort of blessed all the way through this film. I mean, things have just happened with this film. You coming in on this film was like, Are you kidding? What you contributed in that final match, getting Randy Lewis, 2 Olympians, and Dan Gable being my idol. When I wrestled, it's like, are you kidding? To be able to work with him. So it's just had that. And sometimes that's what happens with films. It's the right place at the right time, and it takes its path. And I think this was such a positive message for us, and that we wanted to, give to an audience. And we wanted a film that the whole family can watch. And really, during these times, I think it's just going to be something that's going to be very uplifting. And so from that point of view, I think, it transcended into something else. And the messaging in the film has a deeper impact on all of us.
Right.
Would you say?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
At this point, it does. for
No,
sure.
no one could have known how, I mean, messages, films with this kind of message are always, I think, important and necessary, but no one could have foreseen how how deep that need would be right now. And it just sort of is this weird moment in time that we're all living in. Then we all could use that inspiration.
Yeah, and it's, the communities coming together, people letting go, trying to work themselves back into something normal. I think this can really help. I think people will forget about a lot of stuff when they're watching this for a couple hours and go, yeah, that was good. I was moved. I felt good about it. So
And I think
hope.
there's something in the movie, I think, for anyone, no matter where you're from, whoever you are, you can find something to take away from this film.
Now, Glenn, we get into the wrestling nuance. This is probably the part where the wrestling community will be the most critical. And they have been just in all of the iconic wrestling movies we've had, whether you like them or not. They're always going to look at the wrestling and like, okay, is it realistic? Now, on set in Texas, when we were shooting the last thing, Joel Shearer and Paul Bradley, who was an All-American in Iowa, they were involved here. Now, explain how the wrestling scenes in the movie evolved over time from the first set to the reshot to what eventually finally hit press and you see it on the big screen.
Well, yeah, Joel and Paul were really instrumental. I mean, these guys, the wrestlers, Casey and Sean and Michael Madden, who's incredible in this film. They all
Michael also wrestled in college too. He actually has the bona fide wrestling chops.
Yeah, and I think Casey wrestled a little bit. Sean didn't have any experience at all, but they rehearsed them for 6 weeks and rehearsed this whole sort of match. And they broke it down like you would a choreographed dance piece. And you just work, okay, let's work this. Let's get this down. Let's get this. Okay, now let's tie 2 and 3 together. Now let's tie 1 and 5 and put all those things together. And it was a great way to work. It was the only way we could really control and have it be dramatic the way we wanted it to be dramatic. And then you saw the seven cameras there filming it, so we didn't want to miss anything. And as far as wrestlers scrutinizing the film, it's like, bring it on. I mean, Gable
it's gonna happen. So
Dan Gable had passed mustard with him. I mean, he loved the film, and I think the wrestling looks authentic. I mean, are they Olympian kind of guys? No, but it's, that, it's high school wrestling, and, I think they did a wonderful job.
Exactly. It's high school wrestling. And Ivy, this is about the social media reach. I mean, this is something that the traffic has gone up, both of the YouTube videos, the Facebook videos, what's hitting Twitter and Instagram. And there seems to be a real excitement, at least from my viewpoint of the wrestling community. But what have you seen firsthand on, what's your initial reactions on the reaction to this so far? And we're still 2 weeks from the release.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens, but so far people seem to, they're just really reacting to the trailer. And I think that I think the wrestling community absolutely is seeing a movie that is for them. But also just, even maybe their relatives who don't wrestle, who still want to see it because they love Cole, or they think it's, an inspirational sports film, an inspirational film. And I think that, again, like we said, that really is something that is needed badly at this moment. And so, we'll see how it goes. But yeah, the response so far has seemed fairly positive.
Yeah,
so
it's
we're really excited about that.
Yeah, really good.
So. One thing I did say is something that, that's
thank you, Jason, because I know that you've really been putting it out there for the in the wrestling community, and we really appreciate it and your support on that.
Well, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I do like my appearances in the film for sure, but
you should be. It's so good. It makes that scene just come alive so much more. That whole sequence. It's not just make that sequence. Like,
gonna just I'm gonna deflect for a minute because I mean, again, full disclosure for those watching and listening, I loved every second of the day and a half I spent down there in Texas, and it was just chance and to use the term chance and happenstance, which leads to my next question. Dan Gable, you mentioned your icon. You got Randy Lewis. Like Glenn, how do those two find themselves into their broadcast positions in the movie? That's a slight spoiler. You can probably figure out what my role is, but those two also part of it. So how do Lubu and Gable end up in this thing?
Well, yeah, I was going, how did they wind up in there? Well, well, we wrote announcers, and Joel Shear, when he was working out with the guys, said, hey, I know Gable, I know, and I go, what? He goes, yeah, I know Gable, and I go, and then I thought about the announcer's role, and I said, because we had three guys there. And then when I spoke to Dan, I called him up and begged him. I mean, it was like such a thrill. And then he goes, well, you got to get Jason Bryant. He's got to be part of this thing. And then I think you, Jason, didn't you recommend Randy Lewis?
I think Randy was down there. He was living in Texas at the time.
Oh, yeah, but
for Gable.
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Wow.
And I think maybe Dan, but pulling you three guys together, I mean, give me a break. That's like, who else has that in their wrestling film?
I just hope the B-roll of that audio has been destroyed from the breaks. Just leave that one alone. But in the time we got left,
yeah.
the fact that there's a wrestling story, the fact that you got to do a wrestling story, the fact you got to work with your family, your wife, your daughter on a wrestling story that has that, and as Cole even said, you guys have echoed this, we need right now a positive story with sport and a true homage, a true respectful presentation of the sport of wrestling. I guess, Glenn, how personally fulfilling has this project been, knowing you finally will get to have this thing out there?
It's really fulfilling, really, really fulfilling. I mean, to bring, the sport that I love to the screen in a way that I think it should be seen, and having the people involved with this project, who's been involved with this, yourself and Dan and Randy, and really lending that kind of credibility to this thing has been, come on, man. It's like, I feel like, okay, I did it. I did my sports film. I did a sports film, and I did what I wanted to do with the sports film, and the sport that I love. So yeah, great.
We took maybe some artistic license with the mat, with the prize fight kind of like.
No, you didn't.
Elevating it up?
You actually didn't. That's a raised platform.
Really?
That looked normal to me. Yeah, that's maybe that state, but there's the nuance there. My friends from Washington are going to be like, wait a minute, but we won't go there now. Last two questions left in the time I got left. Hallie, this is one for you. You were known as one of the greatest TV moms of all time. How do you play the role you do, and how are people going to be like, no, this is not a spoiler, to go from Joe McGuire to this?
Distant cousin.
All I have to say is she's part of this. Melinda, the character I play in The Last Champion, is part of the story of John Wright's path to redemption. And there are lots of people in your life, if you're the star of your own story, like he's the star of his own story. I mean, Cole is the star of the movie, but John Wright is his own central figure to his life. There's lots of people in your life. There's lots of people in my life and all our lives. And some of them are helpful to us. Some of them are not so helpful to us. Some of them are just weird decor. Some of them are mentors. You know what I mean? So it's sort of like, she's just one of those people that's in that town that, didn't catch that golden ring. Let's just say it nicely.
Under a minute to go. Ivy, going to give you the last word. Where can people find out about this movie coming out December 8th on social? Where can they get it?
It's on iTunes right now to pre-order, and then it comes out on December 8th on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon. So you can check out our Facebook page is The Last Champion, and then our Instagram is @TheLastChampionFilm, and then Twitter as well. So check it out. We're really excited about it.
Ivy, Hallie, Glenn, great to catch up with you guys again. We'll be in touch. There's more coming from The Last Champion, December 8th. Appreciate your time and love to be a part of it.
As always, thank you, Jason.
Thank you for your contribution.